Russia's forward outpost in Europe is collapsing, and Vladimir Putin is sending the survivors to die in Ukraine. Kaliningrad, once Russia's showcase in the heart of Europe, is now an economic death trap. NATO has sealed the borders. Factories have gone silent, and 18,000 truck drivers just lost their livelihoods overnight. But the crisis goes deeper than economics. Listen to this Russian platoon commander's confession as he sends disabled men to the front. "I wish the guys good luck, a safe return home alive and well, and may God grant that everything works out for everyone." These men were already left to die in their own cities. Now they're being sacrificed in Ukraine. This is Strategic Signal Report. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and tonight we're analyzing Kaliningrad's silent catastrophe, the logistical strangulation, the industrial collapse, and the mass exodus no one is talking about. How did NATO seal Russia's European gateway? Why are 18,000 families suddenly destitute? And where are the survivors fleeing? Let's break down the siege of Kaliningrad. Kaliningrad's tragedy lies in its geography. It's completely isolated from mainland Russia, Poland to the south, Lithuania to the east and north. In other words, NATO's Iron Ring. Until 2022, this geography was a gateway. BMWs and Kias entered Russia through here. European goods flowed freely. But today, Kaliningrad is an economic isolation chamber. The epicenter of the crisis is the Kibartai railway crossing on the Lithuanian border. Trains from mainland Russia must pass through Lithuanian territory to reach Kaliningrad. But Lithuania is imposing a historic embargo citing EU sanctions: cement, steel, luxury goods, coal. 50% of the raw materials Kaliningrad's industry needs are now on the sanctioned goods list, and Lithuania isn't just banning, it's imposing quotas. Whatever passed last year, you can only pass half this year. Trains that fill the quota are left at the border. Wagons held up for weeks. In the south, Poland has militarized the border. The Grzechotki and Bezlady crossings used to be trading points with lines of trucks. Now Poland is laying dragon's teeth concrete barriers as part of the Eastern Shield project. Commercial transit has effectively stopped. Polish customs searches every Russian truck for days, treating them as potential espionage vehicles. This is called the Italian strike, dragging things out to wear people down. The result: trucks are shut down. Transit times reached 14 days. Russia has only one option left: the sea route. Moscow said, "We'll transport everything by ship," but they forgot one critical detail. Goods transported by rail cost 1 unit, by ship 4 units. Moreover, ferries are insufficient and port infrastructure cannot handle the load. Ships wait in line for days. This logistical bottleneck is bringing down Kaliningrad's industrial giants one by one. Let me show you what industrial collapse looks like in real time. Avtotor, once called Russia's Detroit, assembled BMWs and Hyundais. It was Kaliningrad's flagship manufacturer. Now it's a ghost factory. They tried to salvage the situation by switching to Chinese brands like Chery and BYD, but it didn't work. Parts aren't coming in. Containers are rotting in the port. Another giant, Bolt Motors, a motorcycle and small engine manufacturer, it had to suspend operations because the parts supply stopped. But the scariest collapse is in the transport sector. Kaliningrad was Russia's truck driver hub. Between 15,000 and 18,000 people worked in logistics. Currently, half of these companies have no cargo to transport. Trucks are rusting in garages. 18,000 families lost their income overnight. For a region with Kaliningrad's population, this is catastrophic, and as industrial giants grind to a halt, ordinary citizens are reverting to medieval living standards. Refrigerators that used to arrive cheaply by truck now have to be shipped by expensive sea freight. Small businesses cannot bear these costs and are going bankrupt. In large supermarkets, prices are twice those in Moscow. For Kaliningrad residents, buying a computer is now as difficult as buying a car. EU sanctions have wiped out Kaliningrad's European character. Lithuania closed transit routes for quality alcoholic beverages, perfumes, cosmetics, and most painfully, food and furniture. Official authorities lie when they say there's no food crisis. Yes, there's no hunger, but there's no variety. Due to transportation costs, the number of brands on shelves has decreased and prices have skyrocketed. The situation is a complete farce when it comes to bulky products like furniture. You have to wait months to buy a sofa set because there's no room on the ferry. Priority goes to military supplies, but the most dangerous consequence of this logistical collapse is happening inside homes: unemployment. According to official data, unemployment in Kaliningrad has skyrocketed by 21.7% since the beginning of the year. 1949 registered unemployed may seem small, but don't be fooled. What makes this crisis truly dangerous is not the number, it's who it hits. Do you know who more than 70% of the unemployed are? Women over 40, urban dwellers who worked for years in accounting or office jobs. The loyal segment of the population is experiencing the shock of their lives. The average time to find a job has increased to 7 months. Due to their age, their chances of finding work again are almost zero. What is Moscow doing? We will provide subsidies. We have allocated 5 billion rubles for maritime transport. On paper, it's a lot of money. In reality, it's an illusion. Foreign intelligence reports and local sources scream the truth. The people don't feel this money. This 5 billion rubles barely covers increased costs for ferry operators. The money disappears into the black hole of logistics companies. It's not reflected as discounts on store shelves. The price of a bag of cement has tripled compared to before the war. The construction sector has come to a standstill. Moscow sends money, but Kaliningrad continues to suffocate under inflation because the problem isn't money. The problem is physical access, and that access is in NATO's hands. But beyond economics, there's an even greater danger looming: darkness. Kaliningrad has been kept afloat for years by a shared electricity grid called Brel dating back to the Soviet era. The region's lights were balanced by a Moscow-centered system that passed through Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Now the Baltic countries are severing this link and switching to Europe's synchronous grid. This isn't a technical update, it's a geopolitical amputation. Kaliningrad is condemned to island mode for electricity. There's no longer a system that balances and shares the load from outside. Every fluctuation, every failure, every moment of excessive consumption carries the risk of turning directly into a blackout. Moscow says, we are ready. We have our own power plants. On paper, that's true. Natural gas power plants like Pregolskaya have been built. But experts whisper this: when the system is isolated, the margin for error becomes zero. The smallest technical failure turns into a chain reaction collapse because there are no spare parts. No maintenance can be done. Who would invest in a place with no energy security? No one. That's why factories are closing. That's why industry is collapsing. Recent sociological surveys reveal the mood of Kaliningrad's population. 1 in 5 adults has had family members leave the region in the past 2 years. It's not just about money. Tensions in the Suwalki corridor, NATO exercises, and Putin's neglect of Kaliningrad. Residents are driving people to flee. Since 2022, it's estimated the population has declined by between 100,000 and 150,000. Do you know who is leaving? Not retirees, the most productive generation aged 25 to 45. Engineers, doctors, IT specialists, architects. The brain and future of the city are packing their bags, but the real tragedy lies in the question, where to? Because for Kaliningraders, the world is now too small and the doors are closed. The largest group, whether they want to or not, is heading for the motherland, the Russian interior. But this isn't a choice, it's a necessity. Kaliningraders enjoyed a semi-European standard of living for years. They would go to Poland for coffee on the weekend. Now they're being dragged into the harsh, gray, and expensive reality of Moscow and Kazan. It's harder to disappear in the mainland. The likelihood of being drafted is higher. Therefore, migrating to the Russian interior is not salvation, it's a transition to a bigger prison. But even going there is a luxury. Airline tickets are on the black market. Subsidized tickets sell out in minutes. Poland, Germany, and the Baltic countries once. The most natural routes are now a fantasy. The doors are effectively walls. Getting a visa with a Russian passport is nearly impossible. Only those with very old residency permits or special family ties can pass through. For the rest, Europe is just a landscape they watch from behind barbed wire. The main route for the young and educated, especially software developers, is Georgia, Armenia, Kazakhstan. Why? Because there's no visa hassle. Russian is spoken, and most importantly, it's possible to escape the war and mobilization. The final destination, Turkey. But this is only an option for the middle and upper classes who have money. There are flight connections and life is relatively flexible. However, residence permits have become more difficult to obtain in Turkey and the cost of living has increased. Still, Istanbul or Antalya offer temporary respite from Kaliningrad's suffocating isolation. Who is left behind? Those with nowhere to go, those without money, and the elderly. This wave of migration is destroying not only the region's present, but also its future for the next 20 years. And here's where Putin's solution becomes truly grotesque. Remember the platoon commander confession from the beginning? Those disabled men limping, forced into uniform, they are Kaliningrad itself. A sick, tired, helpless city walking to its death because it has nowhere to run. Putin needs these people to turn the tide in Ukraine. But the painful truth is this: Before being sent to the front, these people had already been left to die in their own cities. No jobs, no prospects, no escape routes. So Putin sends them to Ukraine, and he sends back coffins. Moscow says, "Don't worry, we are here." But all it sends are weapons and coffins. The civilian population has become hostage to Putin's imperial ambitions. Kaliningrad is under a modern siege today, not with guns and tanks, but with economics, logistics, and loneliness, and Putin's only answer is conscription. Tonight we've analyzed the silent catastrophe unfolding in Kaliningrad, Russia's European outpost collapsing under NATO's logistical siege. 18,000 truck drivers lost their livelihoods. Factories have gone silent. The population is fleeing, and Putin is sending the survivors to die in Ukraine. This is economic warfare, and the civilians are paying the price. This is the kind of geopolitical analysis you get every day at Strategic Signal Report. We expose crises mainstream media ignores. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for daily intelligence briefings on Russia, NATO, and global power shifts. We post at AM and PM's. Comment below. How long can Kaliningrad survive this siege? Will Russia's last stronghold in Europe collapse from within? For Strategic Signal Report, I'm Sarah Mitchell. We'll continue tracking Kaliningrad's slow-motion catastrophe. Stay informed, stay analytical, and we'll see you in the next briefing.